Hi, I'm Hoodie here, and this is the story of how I built a roller coaster. First of all, I think it's worth saying that I know my way around a coaster. I've played my fair share of Parkitect, and I've earned my Amusemeneer badge. I know my corkscrews from my loop-de-loops, thank you very much. But in Dwarf Fortress, roller coasters are a different beast. Here they're called minecart tracks, and they're apparently supposed to be used to transport things. Roller coasters are difficult in Dwarf Fortress because the dwarves just slip right out from under the safety bar. Wait no, it's actually because building the tracks is kind of complicated. I've played Dwarf Fortress for many years, but this was probably only my second or third time bothering to build some tracks, because menus like this, and this, and this have always convinced me that just making my dwarves work harder would be easier than setting all of that up. This time I couldn't get out of it though. If I wanted to make a roller coaster, I had to learn. And so learn I did. I read the wiki page for minecarts, I constructed tracks and tested them. I even had to dig a tube all the way from the surface to the magma layer so I could build axles that would bring windmill power down from the surface to a roller that would speed up the cart. I didn't know how to do any of that when I started, and so the whole construction process was a very rewarding learning experience. Only rewarding for me, of course. My dwarves had an absolutely terrible time. I was so focused on the coaster that I kind of forgot they needed things like food. Luckily no one starved, but unluckily my negligence did lead to the unopposed spread of were-apes for a time. Eventually I got it under control by exiling all of the were-apes when they were in their human form. Well, all but one. He had fallen into a strange mood, and then while working on his artifact was bitten by a were-ape, and so when he transformed he was still stuck in his workshop. If I was paying more attention to what was going on in the fortress, I probably would have waited and let him finish before exiling him, but I really wanted to get back to working on the coaster. And so I just told some of my dwarves to get rid of him. People were not big fans of all that. On top of the brief were-ape outbreak, we also had a crundle infestation for a time. I don't know where they came from, but they scurried all around the minecart tracks, knocking dwarves into the water, and wandered up to the surface where they started fights with people. I didn't pay much attention to this either, honestly, and kinda just left the dwarves and crundles to figure it out on their own while I read some more of the wiki page. For my dwarves, the lack of care was bad enough. But what was even worse was when I needed them to do something, like test out the track. Many of the tests were harmless, and just resulted in them having to walk all the way back to the top. But I had read something on the wiki that interested me, namely the ability to skip a minecart across a pool of magma, and the dwarves that were asked to test out that section of track fared far worse than the others. I didn't really have a frame of reference for how far I could expect a wooden minecart to travel across magma, so I started optimistic and worked my way in from there. After 4 dwarves tested this section and didn't make it across, the gap the kite would have to cross had shrunk to a single tile. I was happy with the rest of my coaster. I thought it was cool that it went through different cavern layers and zoomed above an underground lake. I liked that sometimes creatures like trolls or crundles got into weird places on the track. It added excitement. But I needed this attempt to work. It was the grand finale of the ride, and the coaster wouldn't be complete without it. So, with my fingers crossed, I watched as a woodworker took the cart and set off on the final test. Success! The accomplishment didn't seem to raise the moods of my dwarves that much, but it did raise mine. I suppose that brings into question who this ride is really for, but instead of thinking too hard about that, I will instead christen the minecart by smashing a barrel of plump helmet wine on her bow, dedicate the coaster to all those that lost their lives, which is way more than ideal, and start running the coaster all day and night until the minecart is so flimsy it explodes going around a corner at 200 kilometers an hour. Such is the life of a roller coaster tycoon. Thanks for watching.